They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But what if I told you that throughout history, some people served it with fire, molten silver, and enough bodies to fill entire cities? Because when human beings decide someone has to pay, they don't just settle for an eye for an eye. They go for the whole bloodline, the entire empire, the complete annihilation of everyone who dared to cross them. Today we're diving into 4 revenge stories so brutal, so mercilessly executed, they rewrote the rules of what it means to cross the wrong person at the wrong time. The year is 945, and somewhere in what we now call Ukraine, a woman is about to prove that hell hath no fury like a widow scorned. Her name was Olga of Kiev, and what she did to avenge her husband's murder wasn't just revenge. It was a masterclass in psychological warfare, strategic deception, and systematic genocide that left an entire civilization literally burning to ash. By the time Olga was finished, the people who killed her husband wished they'd never been born. Prince Igor ruled Kiev and Rus, an empire stretching across modern Ukraine and Russia. To his west lived the Drevlians, a tribe who despised him. When Igor's father died in 912, they stopped paying tribute. Igor waited 33 years before marching into their capital, Korostan, with an army to collect. The Drevlians paid up. That should have been the end. But greed got the better of Igor. On the road home, he started thinking the tribute seemed light. So he turned around with just a handful of men and rode back to demand more. The Drevlians did not like this. In fact, they hated it so much that they killed Igor's escorts immediately. But for Igor himself, they had something special planned. Something that makes your stomach turn 5 centuries later. They bent 2 birch trees toward each other, tied one of Igor's legs to each tree, then cut the supports. The trees snapped back with explosive force, ripping Igor's body cleanly in half. Prince Mal, the Drevlian ruler, was feeling pretty good about himself. With Igor gone, he saw an opportunity. He'd marry Igor's widow, Olga, combine their territories, and rule a united empire. So he sent 20 of his finest ambassadors to Kiev with a proposal. Here's where you think you know how this story goes. You expect Olga to be distraught, powerless, maybe forced into an unwanted marriage. But Olga was built different. She welcomed the ambassadors warmly, told them they must be exhausted from their journey, and suggested they return to their boat to rest. Tomorrow, she promised, her men would bring them back to the palace in style. The Drevlians, probably thinking this was easier than expected, agreed. The next morning, Olga's men arrived at the shore. True to her word, they brought the ambassadors back to Kiev, but not quite as expected. They picked up the entire boat with all 20 men still inside and began carrying them toward the city. The ambassadors were stunned by this hospitality. What service? What respect? They were being treated like absolute royalty, until the ride got bumpy. All through the night, while the Drevlians slept in their boat, Olga's men had been digging a massive trench. When they arrived with the ambassadors, Olga gave a simple order. Dump them, the boat, the men, everything straight into that hole. They were buried alive, screaming as dirt piled on top of them. But she wasn't done. Olga sent messengers back to Korostan. She was considering the marriage proposal, but Prince Mal should send his most distinguished nobles to properly escort his bride. The Drevlians complied, sending their highest lords. When they arrived, Olga suggested they freshen up in a bathhouse she'd prepared. Once inside, her men locked the doors and set the building on fire. 2 groups down. Time for the third. She sent another message. She was ready to come, but wanted to hold a funeral feast to properly mourn Igor first. Prince Mal prepared a grand celebration. Olga arrived, encouraged everyone to drink and mourn with her. By evening, every Drevlian was drunk. Her men, who'd been pretending to drink all night but remained sober, began the slaughter. Thousands died that night, including Prince Mal himself, but even that wasn't enough. Olga returned to Kiev, raised an army, and laid siege to Korostan itself. For over a year the city suffered. Food ran out. Supplies dwindled, people starved. Finally, Olga sent a message. Just pay the tribute and this all ends. The Drevlians, having been fooled 3 times already, were terrified this was another trick. Olga assured them it wasn't. To prove her good faith, She only asked for a small token, 3 pigeons and 3 sparrows from each house in the city. The Drevlians, desperate and confused by such a strange request, complied. They gathered the birds and handed them over. That night, Olga's men tied small pieces of sulfur wrapped in cloth to each bird's leg, set them on fire, and released them. Hundreds of tiny embers flew through the darkness, each bird returning instinctively to its nest. Within hours, every building in Korostan was ablaze. The city burned completely to the ground. Olga claimed all Drevlian territory for herself. The moral of this story? Pay your tribute. But more importantly, never underestimate a widow with a plan. Speaking of people who should never be underestimated, let's talk about a 25-year-old Roman who turned a kidnapping into the pirate's worst nightmare. The year is 75, before Common Era, and Julius Caesar is sailing across the Aegean when pirates board his ship. Most hostages would be terrified. Caesar was offended. The pirates set a ransom of 20 talents, roughly $2 million today. Caesar's response? He demanded they raise it to 50 talents. Being ransomed for a mere 20 was an insult to his value. The confused pirates agreed and took him to their island hideout. Caesar refused to act like a prisoner. He walked freely around the ship, ate with the pirates, exercised with them. When they got too loud, he shushed them like unruly children. Every day, he forced them to sit and listen to the speeches and poems he was writing. When they didn't applaud enthusiastically enough, he called them illiterate barbarians to their faces. Can you imagine? A hostage insulting his captors. Throughout his 38 days as a hostage, Caesar repeatedly joked that once he was free, he'd return and crucify every single one of them. The pirates laughed. They thought it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. This arrogant Roman kid actually thought he could threaten them. When the ransom arrived and Caesar was released, the pirates thought they'd won. They were wrong. Caesar immediately raised a fleet, sailed back and captured every single pirate. He recovered his money plus their plunder. Then he made good on his promise, crucifying them all exactly as he'd warned. Some accounts say he showed mercy by having their throats cut first. How generous. The pirates had laughed at his threats. They died learning that Julius Caesar never joked about revenge. Now if you're enjoying these stories of historical payback that went absolutely nuclear, hit that subscribe button because we've got a revenge plot so elaborate coming up next. It took 2 full years of planning and deception to pull off. And trust me, you won't want to miss it. Imagine spending 2 years pretending to be a drunk, divorced failure while secretly coordinating with 46 others to execute perfect revenge. That's exactly what happened in feudal Japan, and it's become one of the most legendary samurai stories ever told. The year is 1701. And Lord Asano is attending ceremonies at Edo Castle under the instruction of Lord Kira, a master of protocol who expects bribes for his teachings. When Asano refuses to pay, Kira insults him publicly for weeks. Finally, Asano snaps. Inside the castle, he draws his sword and slashes Kira's face. Drawing a weapon in the shogun's palace meant automatic death. Asano is forced to commit seppuku. His lands are confiscated, and his samurai become ronin. Kira survived with just a scar and enormous satisfaction, but he was smart enough to know Asano's samurai might seek revenge. He hired security and sent spies to watch them. Over the next year, the ronin seemed to give up. They took ordinary jobs. Their leader, Oishi, divorced his wife, sent his children away, and spent his days drunk in brothels. Witnesses saw this once proud samurai stumbling through streets, a broken man. Another year passed. Kira reduced his guards. He felt safe. He was wrong. On January 30th, 1703, 47 ronin silently surrounded Kira's mansion in the dead of night. Every samurai who appeared to have moved on had actually been in contact through coded messages the entire time. Oishi's deterioration, the divorce, the drinking, all of it had been an elaborate act stretching across 2 full years. They'd planned every detail of this night with military precision. Before attacking, the ronin visited Kira's neighbors to explain they weren't common thieves or murderers. They were samurai defending their lord's honor according to the code of Bushido, and no innocent person would be harmed. Unsurprisingly, everyone in the neighborhood despised Kira, and chose to do absolutely nothing to stop what was about to happen. Some even watched from their windows as the attack began. Oishi beat a drum, the signal. The assault exploded into action. They cut through Kira's guards with the practiced efficiency of professional warriors. Archers positioned on the roof shot down anyone trying to escape and summon help. Within minutes, 38 of Kira's men were dead or dying, their blood staining the snow red. But Kira had vanished. They searched until someone noticed his bed was still warm. They found a secret passage leading to a storehouse. Inside, cowering with a dagger, was Kira. Oishi offered Kira the dagger their master had used for seppuku, giving him a chance to die with honor. Kira just trembled, unable to act. Finally, Oishi took the dagger and cut off Kira's head himself. As the sun rose, the 47 Ronin carried Kira's head 6 miles to their master's grave. Townspeople cheered, offering food and gifts. They placed the head before the tomb, fulfilling their duty. Then they turned themselves in. Knowing they'd face execution, the shogun allowed them to die with honor through seppuku. All 47 rest today in graves surrounding their master. But if you think that's devastating, you haven't heard what happens when you insult Genghis Khan. Our final story is about the ultimate around and find out, and the body count is staggering. In 1218, Genghis Khan sent 450 merchants to the city of Otrar, hoping to expand trade westward. It was a peaceful mission. Those merchants never came home. The governor of Otrar, a man named Inalchuk, did something that in retrospect was staggeringly stupid. He executed the entire caravan, all 450 merchants, and stole their goods, selling everything to wealthy citizens. One camel driver managed to escape and rode back to Mongolia to tell Genghis Khan what had happened. Genghis was furious, but he tried to stay diplomatic. One last chance. He sent a small delegation, 1 Muslim and 2 Mongolians, to Shah Muhammad, ruler of the Khwarezmian Empire. The message was crystal clear and simple. Hand over Inalchuk for punishment, and we'll forget this ever happened. Peace could still be achieved. Shah Muhammad's response was to execute the Muslim diplomat and shave the beards of the 2 Mongolian envoys, the ultimate form of disrespect in Mongol culture, before sending them back. That single moment of arrogance sealed the fate of 15 million people. Genghis raised an army of 200,000 men. This wasn't going to be a raid or a quick military strike. This was going to be complete and total annihilation. The Mongols attacked multiple cities simultaneously in a coordinated campaign of destruction. When the walls of Bukhara finally fell after relentless assault, Genghis Khan himself rode through the shattered gates into the heart of the city and made a proclamation that still echoes through history. He told the terrified citizens gathered before him that he was sent by God as punishment for their sins. Then he calmly ordered his men to slaughter everyone in the city. Only skilled artisans and craftsmen were spared, taken as slaves to serve the Mongol Empire. After 5 brutal months besieging Otrar, they finally captured Inalchuk, the man whose greed had started this entire nightmare. He fought to the very end, throwing bricks and roof tiles at Mongol soldiers when he ran out of actual weapons. Some historical accounts say that Genghis Khan had molten silver poured into Inalchuk's eyes and ears as punishment for his greed, a fitting end for a man who couldn't resist stolen treasure. But Genghis didn't stop there. He systematically destroyed every single city in the Khwarezmian Empire. Shah Muhammad spent the rest of his miserable life running from the Mongols, never stopping, never safe, constantly looking over his shoulder until he finally died of pneumonia on a tiny, desolate island in the Caspian Sea. When the dust finally settled and the fires burned out, the Khwarezmian Empire had been completely erased from existence, 15 million people dead. That's the combined population of New York City, Los Angeles, and Chicago. An entire empire, centuries of culture and civilization, wiped off the map because one governor got greedy and one Shah was too proud to apologize. So what do these 4 stories teach us? That revenge throughout history hasn't been about quick satisfaction or momentary justice. It's been about making a statement so brutal, so absolutely devastating, that the story gets told for centuries afterward as a warning to anyone else who might be thinking about crossing the wrong person. Olga of Kiev didn't just kill the men who murdered her husband. She methodically obliterated their entire civilization using fire, deception, and psychological warfare. Julius Caesar didn't just escape from pirates. He came back with a fleet and crucified every single pirate who had dared to laugh at his threats. 47 samurai didn't just assassinate the man who destroyed their master. They spent 2 full years living lies, crafting the perfect revenge down to every last detail. And Genghis Khan didn't just punish the men directly responsible for killing his merchants. He erased an entire empire from the map, killing 15 million people in the process. These weren't acts of justice by any modern standard. They were demonstrations, brutal and unforgettable, of what happens when you cross the wrong person at the wrong time. And maybe that's the real lesson hiding in these blood-soaked stories. Throughout human history, the most terrifying revenge hasn't come from mindless rage or heat-of-the-moment violence. It's come from cold, calculated patience. From people who waited months or even years, who carefully planned every move, who let their enemies think they were safe, weak, or beaten, right before they struck with absolutely devastating force that changed the course of history. What do you think? Were these acts of revenge justified by the brutal standards of their time? Or did these historical avengers go too far, even by ancient standards? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more shocking stories from history that make modern revenge plots look absolutely tame by comparison, make sure you're subscribed to this channel because we've got plenty more where these came from. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.